The stars looked different now that humanity knew they were not alone. Captain Jack Morrison stood in the command center of the orbital station floating above Mars and stared at the massive display screens covering the walls. Each screen showed something that made his blood run cold. Ships. Thousands of alien ships moving toward Earth's solar system like a swarm of angry insects. He had been a military officer for 15 years, but nothing prepared him for this moment. The aliens called themselves the Galactic Council. They ruled most of the known galaxy, and they had just discovered humanity 6 months ago. That discovery had not gone well. Admiral Lisa Brennan walked into the command center with quick steps. She was the highest-ranking officer in Earth's defense fleet, and the weight of humanity's survival rested on her shoulders. Her face showed no fear, but Jack knew her well enough to see the concern in her eyes. "How long until they reach the outer planets?" she asked. 48 hours, Jack replied. "Maybe less if they increase speed." Lisa nodded slowly and looked at the screens. The alien fleet was enormous. Their ships were 10 times larger than anything humans had built. Each vessel glowed with power that Earth's scientists could barely understand. The Council had been traveling between stars for thousands of years, while humans had only managed it for 3 centuries. "Have they responded to our last message?" Lisa asked. "Yes," Jack said and pulled up the transmission. "You're not going to like it." The holographic image of a Xanthari commander appeared in the center of the room. The alien looked like a cross between a lizard and a bird with golden scales, and eyes that burned with intelligence. Its voice came through the translator as cold and dismissive. "Humans of Earth. The Galactic Council has made its decision. You will abandon all colonies beyond your home system. You will restrict all space travel to your own star. You will submit to Council authority and accept our guidance. If you refuse these terms, we will remove you from the galaxy by force. You have 24 hours to respond." The message ended and the hologram disappeared. Lisa stood silent for a long moment. Around the command center, other officers stopped their work to watch her. Everyone knew what was coming. Everyone knew the choice they faced. "Get me Lieutenant Ryan Palmer," Lisa said finally. Ryan arrived within minutes. He was young for his rank, but he had proven himself as one of the best reconnaissance officers in the fleet. He had spent the last 3 months studying the Council's fleet movements and gathering every piece of information he could find. "Tell me something good, Ryan," Lisa said. Ryan shook his head. "I wish I could, Admiral. Their fleet has over 3,000 combat ships. We have 192. Their weapons can destroy a planet. Ours can barely scratch their shields. Every tactical simulation we run shows the same result." "We lose every simulation?" Jack asked. "Every single one," Ryan confirmed. "We might last a week if we're lucky. More likely they'll crush us in 3 days." Commander Amy Richardson joined them at the main console. She was head of tactical operations and had been running battle scenarios non-stop for the past week. Her eyes were red from lack of sleep, but her mind was still sharp. "There has to be something we can do," Amy said. "Some weakness we can exploit." "Their technology is better," Ryan said. "Their ships are bigger. Their weapons are stronger. They've conquered dozens of species. What do we have that they don't?" Jack had been thinking about that question for weeks. He had studied military history since he was a teenager. He knew every major battle humanity had ever fought. Humans had been at war with each other for thousands of years. They had perfected the art of killing in ways no other species seemed to understand. "Experience," Jack said quietly. Everyone turned to look at him. "What did you say?" Lisa asked. "We have experience," Jack repeated louder now. "The Council species have been at peace for generations. They fight wars, but they do it with rules and honor. They line up their ships and blast away at each other until someone surrenders. They've never faced an enemy that fights dirty." Amy's eyes widened. "You want us to fight like guerrillas?" "I want us to fight like humans," Jack said. "We spent 3,000 years killing each other. We know every trick. Ambushes, traps, hit-and-run attacks, psychological warfare. The Council thinks war is something you do with honor and dignity. We know war is about survival by any means necessary." Lisa walked closer to Jack. "You're talking about abandoning every rule of engagement. No warning attacks, targeting supply lines, using their own tactics against them." "I'm talking about winning," Jack said. "We can't beat them in a fair fight, so we don't fight fair." Ryan looked at the tactical displays showing the approaching fleet. "It's insane. We'd be outnumbered and outgunned, doing things they won't expect. They'll call us barbarians." "Let them," Lisa said. Her voice had changed now. The uncertainty was gone and replaced with cold determination. Better to be living barbarians than dead honorable soldiers. Jack, start working on a battle plan. Amy, I want every ship captain ready to hear it. Ryan, find me everything you can about their supply lines and command structure. The officers moved quickly to their tasks. Lisa stayed at the main console and looked at the enemy fleet on the screens. The Galactic Council thought humanity would surrender or die quickly. They thought humans were just another primitive species that would bow before their superior power. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The Council had ruled the galaxy for millennia without serious challenge. They had grown comfortable with their dominance. They had forgotten that the most dangerous predator was not the strongest or the fastest, but the one with nothing to lose. Jack pulled up star maps and began marking positions. His plan was taking shape. It was brutal and ruthless and completely against everything the Council believed about warfare. It was perfectly human. In 24 hours, the Xanthari would receive Earth's response to their ultimatum. It would not be surrender. It would not be negotiation. Admiral Lisa Brennan would send them 3 simple words that would echo through history. Come and take it. Bidio. War for humanity's freedom was about to begin, and the Galactic Council had no idea what they had just started. They had poked a sleeping bear, and now they would learn why humans had survived every challenge their violent planet had thrown at them. They would learn that humanity's greatest weapon was not their technology or their numbers, but their absolute refusal to give up. The Tremors that would shake the halls of the Galactic Council were still hours away, but the first crack in their empire had already formed. Humanity was going to war. The Xanthari fleet entered the solar system with all the confidence of a species that had never lost a war. Their massive dreadnoughts moved in perfect formation with their shields glowing bright blue against the darkness of space. The High Commander sent one final transmission to Earth demanding immediate surrender. Admiral Lisa Brennan's response was exactly what Jack Morrison had suggested. 3 words that would become famous across the galaxy. Come and take it. The Xanthari commander was confused by the response. In all their centuries of conquest, no species had ever been so defiant when facing certain defeat. He ordered his fleet to advance and expected the human ships to either flee or form up for a traditional battle. What happened next caught him completely off guard. The human fleet scattered. Every single ship broke formation and flew in different directions at maximum speed. Some headed toward the asteroid belt. Others dove toward Jupiter's massive gravity well. A few went straight up out of the solar plane where no sane commander would position their forces. The Xanthari tried to follow, but their targeting systems were designed to track organized fleet movements, not individual ships acting like startled fish. Captain Jack Morrison commanded a group of 20 frigates that were heading toward Saturn. His ships were smaller than the enemy vessels, but they were fast. The Council had built their ships for power and endurance. Humans had built theirs for speed and flexibility. It was the difference between a hammer and a knife. Both could kill, but in very different ways. All ships break into attack pattern Delta, Jack ordered. His frigate pilots had trained for this maneuver for months. They split into pairs and began weaving through the rings of Saturn using the ice and rock as cover. 3 Xanthari cruisers followed them into the rings and immediately regretted it. The human ships knew how to navigate the debris field. The alien ships did not. They had to slow down to avoid collisions, while the human vessels darted between ice chunks like they were born to do it. Jack watched as his pilots got behind the enemy cruisers and opened fire on their engine sections. The Xanthari shields were strong in front but weaker in back. It was a design flaw that made sense for traditional warfare but was fatal against an enemy that refused to fight fair. 2 of the 3 cruisers lost power and went spinning into Saturn's rings. The third managed to turn around but was hit by a surprise attack from Commander Kevin Torres and his squadron of fighters. Kevin had been hiding inside one of Saturn's smaller moons, waiting for exactly this moment. His fighters swarmed the cruiser like angry bees and targeted every sensor array and weapon port they could find. The cruiser survived, but it was blind and helpless. Across the solar system, similar scenes were playing out. Lieutenant Nicole Hayes commanded a stealth frigate called the Defiant. Her ship had been built using experimental technology that the Council had rejected as inefficient. It could hide from most sensor types by bending electromagnetic radiation around its hull. Nicole had spent the past 2 days slowly moving through enemy formations and planting quantum mines along their projected paths. When the Xanthari Fleet tried to regroup and form a proper battle line the mines activated. The explosions ripped through 3 dreadnoughts and damaged a dozen more ships. The enemy formation collapsed into chaos as captains tried to figure out where the attack had come from. Nicole was already moving to her next target with a cold smile on her face. The Korvath Dominion decided to try a different approach. They were the Council's ground combat specialists, and they believed humans might be tricky in space, but would fall quickly on solid ground. They sent landing forces to Mars, where the mining colonies had millions of civilians. It should have been an easy victory. Major Daniel Chen and his garrison troops proved otherwise. Daniel had studied every guerrilla war in human history. He knew that the Korvath expected the humans to defend the colony centers where the civilians lived, so he evacuated the centers and turned them into traps. When the Korvath landed and moved into what looked like abandoned buildings, they found automated turrets and explosive charges waiting for them. The real human forces hit them from the hills and tunnels around the colonies. Daniel's troops used the Martian terrain like they had been born on the Red Planet. They would attack and then disappear into lava tubes before the Korvath could respond. They destroyed supply depots and communication relays. They made the Korvath forces paranoid about every shadow and every sound. After 3 days of constant harassment, the Korvath commander requested reinforcements. He had lost a third of his troops and gained nothing. The Council was learning a hard lesson. Humans did not fight like any species they had encountered before. Back on Earth, Dr. Laura Bennett worked in a secret facility buried deep underground. She led a team of scientists who were studying captured alien technology, but they were not trying to copy it. They were trying to weaponize it in ways the aliens had never imagined. The Council used plasma weapons designed to disable ships with minimal damage. Dr. Bennett's team modified the weapons to overload and explode. They turned medical equipment that was meant to heal into devices that could disrupt alien nervous systems. The problem with the Council, Laura explained to her team, is that they've been civilized for too long. They've forgotten that any technology can be a weapon if you're creative enough. Her words proved true when her team sent their first weapon modifications to the fleet. Commander Amy Richardson tested the new plasma overload torpedoes against a Velkara destroyer. The torpedo hit the ship's power core and caused a chain reaction that tore the destroyer apart from the inside. It was brutal and effective and completely outside the Council's understanding of warfare. The Velkara Collective were known as the galaxy's master strategists. They had mathematical models that could predict the outcome of any battle with 90% accuracy. They had used these models to defeat every enemy they had ever faced. But now their models were failing. Human behavior did not fit any pattern they understood. Colonel Brandon Walsh gave them another reason to doubt their mathematics. He commanded a bomber wing that was tasked with disrupting enemy supply lines. Instead of just destroying the supply ships, Brandon did something the Velkara never anticipated. He disabled them and pushed them into the path of incoming reinforcement fleets. The Council ships had to slow down to avoid collisions or rescue their own vessels. Either way, their carefully planned timeline fell apart. They fight without honor, the Velkara fleet commander reported to the Council. They use our own ships against us. They hide in ambush. They target supplies and infrastructure. This is not war. This is chaos. Admiral Lisa Brennan read the intercepted transmission and allowed herself a small smile. Chaos was exactly what she wanted. The Council had grown comfortable with their orderly universe. They had rules and protocols for everything. Humans were showing them that rules only worked when both sides agreed to follow them. The first month of the war ended with the Council forces in full retreat. They had lost hundreds of ships. Their ground forces on Mars had been evacuated in defeat. Their supply lines were in shambles. Most importantly, their confidence was shattered. For the first time in millennia, the Galactic Council had encountered an enemy that scared them. Jack Morrison stood in the command center and watched the enemy fleet withdraw beyond Neptune's orbit. His crew was exhausted but victorious. They had proven that humanity could not only survive but fight back against impossible odds. What happens now? Amy asked. Now we take the fight to them, Lisa said. They came to our home expecting an easy victory. Time to show them what happens when you make humans angry. The war was far from over, but the balance had shifted. Humanity had bought itself time and respect. The Tremors were just beginning. The second month of war brought changes that shocked the entire galaxy. Human ships that should have been defending their home system were now appearing deep in Council territory. They struck at outposts and supply depots that had never been attacked in thousands of years. The Council species had grown so comfortable with their dominance that many of their facilities had minimal defenses. That mistake was costing them dearly. Captain Jack Morrison led his fleet through a route that should have been impossible to navigate. The space between Council worlds was filled with natural hazards that made faster-than-light travel dangerous. Asteroid fields and radiation storms and gravity wells that could tear a ship apart. The Council had mapped safe routes over centuries of careful exploration. Humans ignored those routes and flew straight through the danger zones. "This is insane," one of Jack's pilots transmitted over the communication channel. "We're going to get killed before we even reach the target." "The Council thinks the same thing," Jack replied. "That's why they'll never expect us. Stay focused and trust your instruments." His fleet emerged from a radiation storm that had been classified as impassable by Council standards. They appeared right next to a major Xanthari supply station that was completely unprepared for attack. The station's defense satellites were pointed toward the safe approach vectors, not toward the hazard zone. Jack's ships destroyed the satellites in minutes and then began targeting the station's fuel reserves. The Xanthari commander of the station sent a desperate distress signal, but help was hours away. By the time reinforcements arrived, the station was a burning wreck and Jack's fleet had vanished back into the radiation storm. The attack sent a clear message to the Council. Nowhere was safe anymore. Admiral Lisa Brennan had approved a strategy that military historians would study for generations. Instead of defending and waiting for the enemy to attack, humanity went on the offensive. Earth's industrial capacity had shifted entirely to war production. Shipyards that used to build cargo vessels and colony ships were now churning out warships at an incredible rate. Engineer Katie Morrison was leading those efforts, and the results amazed even her. Katie was Jack's younger sister, but she had chosen engineering over military service. Now her work was just as important as any battle. She had found ways to cut construction time in half by using modular designs and automated assembly. A ship that should take 6 months to build was rolling out of the yards in 3 months. Quality was lower than ideal, but quantity had its own advantages. "We don't need perfect ships," Katie explained to her team. "We need ships that can fight and ships that can be replaced quickly when they're destroyed. The Council builds vessels meant to last centuries. We're building vessels meant to win this war." Her approach proved effective when Commander Kevin Torres took command of a newly built destroyer fresh from the yards. The ship had rough edges and systems that needed fine-tuning, but it was fast and deadly. Kevin used it to hunt Council patrol ships in the border regions between human and alien space. In 2 weeks, he destroyed 5 enemy vessels and damaged 3 more. When his ship took critical damage, he simply abandoned it and requested a replacement. Katie had another one ready within days. The Council's economic model could not compete with human production rates. They built quality vessels that took years to construct and were meant to serve for generations. Humans built adequate vessels that could be produced quickly and replaced easily. It was the difference between crafting fine art and manufacturing weapons on an assembly line. Dr. Laura Bennett made another breakthrough that changed the nature of the war. Her team had been studying the Council's faster-than-light drive systems and found something interesting. The alien drives were much faster than human drives, but they had built-in safety limits. The Council species were cautious and refused to push their technology beyond safe parameters. Humans had no such concerns. "If we remove the safety protocols and overclock the power cores, we can match their speed," Laura told Admiral Brennan. "Maybe even exceed it. What's the risk?" Lisa asked. "The drives might burn out after a few jumps. The ship might shake apart from the stress. The crew might get exposed to dangerous radiation levels." Laura paused and smiled. "But they'll be the fastest ships in the galaxy." Lisa approved the modifications immediately. Within weeks, a new class of human scout ships was outrunning everything the Council had. Lieutenant Ryan Palmer took command of one of these experimental vessels and used it to penetrate deep into Velcara space. The Velcara were the Council's intelligence experts, and they had networks of spy satellites monitoring every approach to their worlds. Ryan flew past all of them before they could even register his presence. The information he gathered was priceless. Ryan discovered that the Council was not as unified as they appeared. The 3 main species that made up the Council had different opinions about how to handle humanity. The Xanthari wanted to escalate and use planet-killing weapons. The Korvath wanted to negotiate. The Velcara were paralyzed by uncertainty because their mathematical models had completely failed to predict human behavior. "They're scared," Ryan reported when he returned to Earth. "The Council has ruled for thousands of years without serious challenge. We're showing them that they're not invincible, and they don't know how to handle it." Admiral Brennan used that fear as a weapon. She authorized raids that served no military purpose except to prove that humans could strike anywhere at any time. Commander Nicole Hayes took her stealth frigate into the heart of Corvath space and scanned their homeworld's defense systems. She didn't attack. She just transmitted a message that said humans had been there and could return whenever they wanted. The psychological impact was devastating. Major Daniel Chen had been promoted after his successful defense of Mars. Now he was leading special operations forces that were training volunteers from species that the Council had conquered. It turned out that humanity was not the only race that resented Council rule. Dozens of subjugated species had been waiting for someone to challenge the established order. Humans provided that challenge, and suddenly the galaxy was full of potential allies. "We're not trying to replace the Council," Daniel told a group of alien resistance fighters. "We're trying to prove that no one should rule the galaxy alone. Every species deserves freedom and the right to defend themselves." His words spread through underground networks across Council space. Revolutionary movements that had been dormant for centuries suddenly became active. The Council found themselves fighting not just humans but also rebellions in their own territory. Their resources were stretched thin trying to maintain order while also fighting a war they were losing. The Battle of Jupiter's Moons became the turning point that everyone remembered. A Council fleet of 200 ships had regrouped and was preparing for a major offensive against Earth. They had learned from their earlier defeats and were using new tactics that their strategists believed would counter human unpredictability. Commander Amy Richardson had been waiting for exactly this moment. Her cyber warfare team had spent months developing a computer virus specifically designed to attack Council ship networks. The aliens linked all their vessels together through quantum communication systems that allowed instant coordination. It made their fleets incredibly efficient, but it also created a vulnerability that humans were eager to exploit. When the virus deployed, it spread through the Council network like wildfire. 30% of the enemy fleet went dark simultaneously. Their computer systems crashed or started giving contradictory orders. Some ships fired on their own allies. Others lost navigation and began drifting. The formation that had taken hours to arrange fell apart in minutes. Captain Jack Morrison's forces hit them while they were still trying to recover from the chaos. The battle lasted 6 hours and ended with a complete human victory. The Council lost over 100 ships either destroyed or captured. Human casualties were surprisingly light because the enemy had been too confused to fight effectively. When the surviving Council ships retreated, they carried with them the knowledge that humanity had found a way to turn their greatest strength into their greatest weakness. News of the battle reached the Galactic Council chambers within hours. For the first time in living memory, the ancient halls were filled with genuine fear. The beings who had ruled unchallenged for millennia now faced a species that refused to follow any of the established rules. Humanity was rewriting the nature of galactic warfare, and the Council had no answer for it. Admiral Lisa Brennan received reports from across the galaxy, showing how their victories were inspiring others. The tremors that had started in Earth's solar system were now shaking the foundations of Council power everywhere. The Galactic Council chambers had stood for 10,000 years as a symbol of order and stability in a chaotic universe. The massive hall was built from crystal that glowed with soft light, and the ceiling showed a perfect map of every star system under Council control. That map had not changed in over 1,000 years, because no species had successfully challenged Council authority in all that time. Now the representatives of 3 great civilizations stared at that map and watched as human ships appeared in systems that should have been unreachable. The Xanthari delegate was the first to speak, and his voice carried barely controlled rage. He was an old warrior who had commanded fleets before humanity had even developed spaceflight. The defeats his people had suffered were personal insults that burned in his mind day and night. "We must use the planet killers," he demanded. "Earth must be destroyed as an example to any species that thinks they can defy us. The humans have proven they cannot be reasoned with or defeated by conventional means." The Velkara representative shifted uncomfortably in her seat. She was a being of pure logic who had spent her entire life studying warfare through mathematical models. Everything she knew about conflict had been proven wrong by the humans, and it troubled her deeply. The planet-killer weapons were banned after the last Great War, she said quietly. We swore never to use them again. Besides, destroying Earth will not stop the humans. They have colonies on dozens of worlds and stations throughout their space. We would have to destroy them all, and the cost would be enormous. The Korvath ambassador was the youngest of the three, and he had been arguing for a different approach since the war began. His people were warriors, but they understood honor and respected strength. The humans had shown both qualities in abundance. Perhaps we should consider negotiation, he suggested. The humans have proven they can fight. They have also shown they are willing to die rather than submit. These are not the qualities of a species we should destroy. These are the qualities of potential allies. The Xanthari delegate slammed his hand on the table with enough force to crack the crystal surface. Allies, they are barbarians who fight without honor. They ambush and hide and use our own technology against us. They break every rule of civilized warfare. Maybe that is because they were never civilized by our standards, the Korvath replied. Or maybe they are showing us that our rules only work when facing enemies who think like we do. The humans think differently, and that makes them dangerous but also valuable. The debate continued for hours while across the galaxy the war raged on. Captain Jack Morrison was proving the Korvath delegate's point by leading another impossible mission. His target was a research station deep in Xanthari space, where the Council's most advanced weapons were being developed. The station was protected by 3 layers of defense satellites and a permanent guard fleet. It should have been untouchable. Jack approached from below the galactic plane where no sane commander would position their forces. His ships had been modified with stealth technology that Dr. Laura Bennett's team had developed by combining human and captured alien systems. They were not completely invisible, but they were hard enough to detect that the Xanthari sensors missed them until it was too late. The attack was over in 20 minutes. Jack's forces destroyed the research station and captured several prototype weapons that the scientists were working on. More importantly, they captured data crystals containing information about every major Council military project. Lieutenant Ryan Palmer secured the data and transmitted it back to Earth using quantum communication that the Council could not intercept. What Ryan found in those data crystals was shocking. The Council had been developing biological weapons designed to target specific species. They had plans for artificial intelligence that could predict and counter any military strategy. They had even been researching how to weaponize stars themselves. The technology was incredible and terrifying in equal measure. They call us barbarians, Jack said when he read the reports, but they've been preparing weapons that could destroy entire civilizations. The only difference is they never needed to use them because everyone was too scared to fight back. Admiral Lisa Brennan took that information and used it to change the nature of the war. She released the data to every species in the galaxy, through channels that the Council could not block. Suddenly, subjugated worlds that had trusted the Council's benevolence learned that their masters had been preparing to exterminate them if they ever became inconvenient. The political fallout was devastating. Rebellions that had been simmering under the surface exploded into open warfare. The Korvath found themselves fighting insurgencies on a dozen worlds. The Velkara lost control of 3 entire sectors when local species declared independence. The Xanthari were forced to pull ships away from the front lines to maintain order in their own territory. The Council's empire was cracking from within. Major Daniel Chen was in the middle of those rebellions, helping coordinate resistance movements. He had teams on 20 different worlds teaching alien fighters the same guerrilla tactics that had worked so well against the Korvath on Mars. The results exceeded every expectation. Species that had been conquered centuries ago were now fighting back with human weapons and human strategies. "You're giving them hope," one alien resistance leader told Daniel. "For the first time in generations, my people believe we can be free. That gift is worth more than any weapon." Engineer Katie Morrison was working harder than ever to keep up with demand for new ships and weapons. The production facilities on Earth and Mars were running at maximum capacity, but it still was not enough. She had started building automated factories on asteroids and moons throughout the solar system. Each facility could produce components that were then assembled at central locations. It was inefficient by Council standards, but it allowed humans to replace losses faster than the enemy could inflict them. Commander Kevin Torres took one of Katie's newest designs into battle and found it to be exactly what the fleet needed. The ship was fast and tough and armed with weapons that combined human and alien technology. He used it to intercept a council convoy carrying reinforcements to a besieged world. The battle should have been close, but Kevin's new ship tore through the enemy escorts like they were made of paper. The Velkara strategists watched that battle and updated their models again. Every update showed the same disturbing trend. Humanity was not just winning battles. They were getting stronger. Their technology was improving at a rate that should have been impossible. Their tactics were evolving faster than the Council could adapt. The mathematical projections showed that within 6 months the humans would have military parity, with the entire Council combined. How is this possible? The Velkara fleet commander asked his analysts. They have been in space for only 3 centuries. We have had 10,000 years. How are they advancing so quickly? The analyst's answer was simple and terrifying. They are not bound by our traditions or our caution. Every human innovation is built on the assumption that the old way is wrong. They never stop changing and improving. We have been stagnant for millennia while they evolve at a pace we cannot match. Commander Amy Richardson proved that point when she deployed another cyber weapon that was even more sophisticated than the first. This virus did not just crash council systems. It learned from them and adapted. It spread through their networks like a living thing and turned their own computer security against them. Within days, the council had lost access to their own surveillance systems in a dozen sectors. Admiral Lisa Brennan stood in the command center and watched as the strategic map updated in real time. Human forces were now operating in areas that had been considered secure council territory just months ago. Allied species were rising up and fighting for their freedom. The council's fleets were scattered and demoralized. Everything was falling into place for the final phase of her plan. It's time, she told her senior officers. We've proven we can fight them to a standstill. Now we prove we can beat them completely. I want every ship prepared for a major offensive. We're going to take the fight right to their doorstep. Captain Jack Morrison smiled when he heard the orders. He had been waiting for this moment since the war began. The Council thought they ruled the galaxy by right of their ancient power and superior technology. Humanity was about to show them that the only right that mattered was the right earned through courage and determination. The tremors that had started in Earth's solar system were now shaking every foundation of Council power. The ancient empire that had seemed eternal was discovering that nothing lasts forever. Change was coming, and it wore a human face. Admiral Lisa Brennan stood before a massive holographic display that showed the Galactic Council chambers from thousands of light years away. The image was being transmitted through quantum communication systems that humans had captured and improved upon during the war. She could see the 3 council delegates sitting in their ancient seats, looking smaller somehow than they had 6 months ago when this conflict began. They were no longer the undisputed masters of the galaxy. They were leaders who had learned the hard way that power without challenge eventually becomes weakness. The Council had requested this meeting after their latest defeat in the Outer Rim territories. Captain Jack Morrison's fleet had surrounded one of their most important strategic stations, and the Council had no reinforcements close enough to stop him. The station commander had surrendered without firing a shot because everyone knew that fighting humans meant casualties that the Council could no longer afford. That surrender had been the final straw that broke the Council's will to continue the war. Lisa had not come to negotiate from a position of weakness. Human ships were positioned throughout Council space, ready to strike at dozens of targets simultaneously. Commander Kevin Torres was in orbit above a Xanthari colony world with enough firepower to level every city on the surface. Lieutenant Nicole Hayes had her stealth frigate hidden near the Velkara homeworld itself. The message was clear and unmistakable. Humanity could reach anyone anywhere, and the Council could do nothing to stop them. We are here to discuss terms, the Xanthari delegate said, and his voice no longer carried the arrogant confidence it had held at the start of the war. The Council recognizes that continued conflict serves no one's interests. We propose a ceasefire and withdrawal of all forces to pre-war positions. Lisa shook her head slowly. She had expected them to try this approach, and she had prepared her response carefully. Around her in the command center stood her senior officers. Major Daniel Chen had returned from the rebellious worlds where he had been training resistance fighters. Engineer Katie Morrison was there representing the industrial might that had allowed humanity to fight a war that should have been impossible to win. Dr. Laura Bennett stood ready to discuss the technological advances that had given humans their edge. The Council does not get to decide terms anymore, Lisa said, and her words were transmitted across the galaxy for everyone to hear. You came to our home system with demands for surrender. You threatened to destroy us if we did not submit to your authority. We have spent 6 months showing you why that was a mistake. Now you will listen to our terms. The Corvath ambassador leaned forward with interest. He had been arguing for negotiations since the beginning, and now he was curious to hear what humanity actually wanted. The Velkara representative looked worried because her mathematical models had predicted that humans would demand complete council surrender. The Xanthari delegate simply looked angry, but he was smart enough to remain silent. Humanity claims full sovereignty over all space within 50 light-years of Earth. Lisa continued. All human colonies remain independent and under our protection. The Council will establish formal diplomatic relations and recognize Earth as an equal power. Trade routes will be opened and protected by mutual agreement. Any species that wishes to ally with humanity will be free to do so without Council interference. The terms were far less harsh than the Council had feared. They had expected humans to demand territory and tribute and complete disarmament. Instead, Lisa was offering a path to peace that allowed everyone to save face. But there was more, and the Council delegates knew it. They waited for the other shoe to drop. In exchange, Lisa said, humanity will cease all offensive operations immediately. We will share selected technologies that do not compromise our security. We will assist in maintaining order in regions where rebellions have destabilized Council authority, and we will establish a mutual defense agreement for threats that come from beyond current explored space. That last part caught everyone's attention. Lieutenant Ryan Palmer had discovered something during his intelligence gathering missions. There were dangers in the unexplored regions beyond Council space. Signals that suggested other civilizations potentially more advanced and definitely more aggressive than anything currently known. The Council had been ignoring those signals because they were too focused on maintaining their internal control. Humanity was offering to help face those threats together. You want an alliance? The Corvath ambassador asked with surprise in his voice. We want a partnership between equals, Lisa replied. The Council has technology and knowledge that spans millennia. Humanity has adaptability and innovation that comes from centuries of conflict. Together we could protect the entire galaxy. Apart we will continue to waste resources fighting each other, while real threats gather in the darkness. The Velkara representative was already running calculations in her mind. An alliance with humans would give the Council access to human tactical thinking and rapid technological development. It would also prevent the complete collapse of Council authority in regions where rebellions had taken hold. The numbers showed that cooperation was more beneficial than continued conflict. But could the Council accept humans as equals after ruling unchallenged for so long? The Xanthari delegate was the hardest to convince. His people had suffered the most defeats and lost the most ships during the war. His pride demanded that humanity be punished for their defiance. But he was also a practical leader who understood when a fight could not be won. He looked at the tactical displays showing human ships positioned throughout Council space and knew that Lisa could destroy everything the Xanthari had built if she chose to do so. How do we know you will honor this agreement? He asked. Humans have shown they do not follow the rules that govern civilized species. Captain Jack Morrison stepped forward and answered before Lisa could speak. We don't follow your rules because your rules were designed to keep everyone else weak. We make our own rules based on one simple principle. We protect our own and we honor our commitments. If the Council agrees to treat us as equals, then we will be the best allies you ever had. But if you ever threaten humanity again, we will finish what we started here today. The silence that followed was heavy with meaning. The Council delegates looked at each other and held a silent conversation through their private communication channels. They were making a decision that would change the galaxy forever. They could continue fighting a war they could not win, or they could accept that the universe had changed and adapt to the new reality. The Corvath ambassador was the first to speak. The Corvath Dominion accepts these terms. We recognize Earth and its allies as sovereign equals. The Velkara representative nodded slowly. The Velkara collective agrees. Our mathematical analysis shows that cooperation offers better outcomes for all parties than continued conflict. All eyes turned to the Xanthari delegate. He sat silent for a long moment, staring at Lisa Brennan with an expression that mixed respect and resentment. Finally he spoke, and his words echoed through the council chambers with finality. The Xanthari Empire accepts these terms. Let it be recorded that on this day humanity has earned its place among the great powers of the galaxy. Lisa allowed herself a small smile. She had achieved everything she set out to accomplish. Humanity was safe and recognized as equals. The war was over and peace had come with honor intact. But she knew this was just the beginning of a much larger story. Commander Torres, Lieutenant Hayes, all forces stand down, Lisa ordered. Captain Morrison, begin coordinating with Council fleet commanders for joint patrols in the border regions. Dr. Bennett, prepare your team to begin technology sharing discussions. Major Chen, work with the Korvath to help stabilize the regions affected by rebellion. Her officers moved quickly to implement the orders. The transition from war to peace would not be simple, but humanity had proven they could handle difficult challenges. Engineer Katie Morrison was already planning how to convert military production facilities back to peaceful purposes. The ships that had been built for war could now be used for exploration and trade. The Galactic Council chambers were indeed trembling, but not just from fear anymore. They were trembling with the vibrations of change that would reshape the entire galaxy. The old order had passed and a new era was beginning. Humanity had announced their arrival not as conquerors or subjects but as equals, who demanded respect and earned it through courage and determination. In the years to come, historians would study how a single species changed the balance of power in the galaxy within months. They would analyze the tactics and strategies that allowed humans to defeat a superior enemy. But the most important lesson would be simpler than any tactical analysis. They would learn that the most dangerous force in the universe was not superior technology or ancient wisdom. It was the refusal to accept defeat. It was the human spirit that looked at impossible odds and said, "Come and take it." Admiral Lisa Brennan watched as the connection to the council chambers closed. Around her, the command center erupted in cheers and celebration. They had done something that would be remembered for thousands of years. They had shown the galaxy that humanity would never bow to anyone and that freedom was worth any price. The tremors that shook the halls of the Galactic Council that day would echo through history as the moment everything changed. Humanity had taken its place among the stars and nothing would ever be the same.